Welcome, everybody, to the latest in our series of SMI, Ship Management International podcasts. And with only a week or so, at the time of recording, to go before Posidonia, absolutely delighted to have in the podcast studio today Harry Vafias, one of Greece's predominant and very important ship owners. Harry has also crafted a new career as well on the television with the Dragon's Den version as well, which I'm sure we can talk a little bit about as well, Harry, towards the end of our conversation. Harry has been a long-term supporter of ship management, certainly when we launched it 20 years ago. Harry lent his support and his guidance, and that meant an awful lot in setting up a magazine of the stature of SMI, and to have that sort of following of somebody as important as a Greek ship-owning market, and Harry as well meant an awful lot to you as a publisher at the time. Harry, nice to see you.
Thank you.
And always good to have a conversation with you and talk with you. We've got Posidonia coming up the next couple of weeks. Well, it sort of starts in earnest next week, really. It's a 2-week affair now. How do you think it's going to pan out? What are your hopes for the occasion?
Look, everybody's happy as rates for most ship types are at an all-time high, I can say. If the war has finished and the straits have opened by then, even better news. But from what I understand, the chances are slim of Iran on reaching a deal with the US in the next 10 days.
So there'll be what you're saying is there's going to be an awful lot of discussion there on the markets, as well as how shipping is going to extract itself from all of this. It is interesting that shipping is now at the center of everything to do with geopolitics.
Yes, lately shipping, which was a somewhat obscure industry, has become very trendy, and all the newspapers and news stations want to know and talk about shipping, especially shipping of oil and gas. So yeah, we are very trendy lately.
Now, we've got this situation in the Middle East with 3,500 ships stranded inside the Strait of Hormuz, 20,000 seafarers, very, very difficult situation. Can you give me your perspective on this? Because, having vessels maybe in there yourself, what's going through your mind? How do you actually sort of strategize with all of this? Because there's an awful lot to worry about, isn't there?
We are in a situation that we have never been before. We are in a situation where there is a double blockade, i.e. Iran and US are actually closing down the straits, which is unheard of. We are in a situation where some insurance companies are trying to not pay their obligations. And it's quite frustrating because if you have an empty ship, because if you have a ship which is laden, you get paid, and you get paid your daily hire by the charters, and you also get paid your war insurance by the charters. But if the ship has finished and is empty in the straits, then you have to pay your daily running costs. You have to pay the war risk insurance, which is actually very expensive, and you have no income. So it's already 2.5 months of closure. So, if you add up the numbers, we're talking about significant numbers, especially if you have more than one ship stuck in there.
What is your view of the Greek ship owners to how this situation is going to pan out, Harry? I mean, Donald Trump is coming out with comments that day by day with, we're going to reach agreement, ceasefires continuing, things are changing all the time. You need to strategize, don't you?
I think that Trump has lost credibility because from the first day of the war, he said that, we're going to attack them and all is going to be good after that. And then we saw every week him saying that the Iranians are begging for a deal, which doesn't seem to be the case. Then he was saying we are very close to reaching a deal and the blockade will take 2-3 weeks. We are approaching 3 months with no real light at the end of the tunnel. So we need to be prepared for a longer state of closure for the Hormuz Straits. Obviously, the ship owners cannot make plans with the geopolitical events going on. I remind you when Russia attacked Ukraine, Putin said it's a 3-4 week military expedition, and it has taken 3 to 4 years. So that the US-Iran case is not 3-4 years, and see if diplomacy will prevail over war. I guess we will know in the next 5 or 10 days.
What do you think is going to happen? What's your sort of gut feeling on this?
My gut feeling. There's going to be war. I might be wrong, but that's my gut feeling. I think that US feels ridiculed by Iran. The proposals that are coming from Iran are the same all the time with minor changes. And if US is serious about Iran not having a nuclear weapon, I think they have no other option but to attack.
Just finally talking on that situation, when you have ships detained and stuck in the Middle East Gulf, you've also got seafarers there and you've got to look after them. And they're going through an awful lot with being away from home, anxiety, all of that side of it. How do ship owners deal with a situation like that? Because you've got managers as well, presumably.
No, we don't have third-party managers. All our ships are managed in-house. There are two types of seafarers. The really worried ones that indeed need psychological support while they're stuck there. And there is the second group, which are the less worried about their safety and more worried about money they're going to extract out of this situation. There are cases of blackmail against the ship owners. They threaten to abandon the ship and leave if the owners don't give them, X amount of money. And because it's nearly impossible to bring new crew into the area, if seafarers abandon a ship, then there is a real problem, as the ship will be with inadequate crew or maybe no crew. The ship owners have two more worries on their heads, except from the having no income and having to pay all these expenses to keep the vessels there and insured. They have also to support the really worried seafarers and the seafarers that just want to greenmail the owners.
Difficult situation. Now, looking at the state of the market at the moment, Harry, I mean, the market rate is very strong. Shipping is very agile. It always tends to react very, very quickly to situations that are going on. We had reports about a month or so ago of VLCC rates of $700,000 a day, whatever. What's your view on the market at the moment? And you've got the different sectors with oil and gas and bulk and general cargo and containers. But on the tanker side, how do you plot it moving forward? Because whatever goes up will come down, once the situation is resolved.
Look, last 4 years, the market has been distracted and distorted as we didn't have a normal, competitive, open market. We had the Ukraine war. We had the limited Cuba situation. We had the Israel attacks on Gaza. We had the disruptions in the Suez Canal. We had the possibility of attack of China onto Taiwan. So the market was distorted in favor of the owners. And so we've reached a point where the rates are at an all-time high, especially for crude ships. And at the same time, a hugely growing order book. So yes, I'm afraid that if you take all these geopolitical events out, the Ukraine war, the Gaza war, the Iran-US war, if you can call it that, you're going to have a significant rate deterioration. And this will be further exaggerated by the huge amount of ships that are coming for delivery between 27 and 29. So the owners and their respective companies have to be ready for this rate decline and have enough money on the side to subsidize these ships when they deliver, as they were ordered at, again, all-time high prices. So we will have to wait and see about that.
Coming on to the Ukraine shadow fleet situation as well. 130 ships out there trading under the sanctioned vessels trading out there under the shadow fleet or so. How do you see that panning out? Because, I mean, they're not being recycled. They're not. A lot of these ships are old. The conditions are not in all good condition. What was your view on that, on the shadow fleet and the impact it's having on the market?
It's quite simple, actually. If you have a ship which you've bought last year for 50 million and it's old, but not very old, and you still can't trade it, even with fake papers, why would you scrap it?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see any real pressure from any governmental body. I don't see any real pressure from the countries that those ships pass by. So yeah, some of these ships have been sanctioned. Some of these management companies have been sanctioned by the US, but they don't deal in US dollars, so they don't care. They don't have any physical presence in the US, so they don't care. And they continue to do their job as normal, I would say. So it's also very worrying, because if there is a pollution incident or an accident or a crash or whatever, with fake papers and probably no insurance. I don't know who will foot the bill of a major oil spill by an Aframax or a Suezmax. So that's also very worrying. But again, I don't see any real action by the IMO or any states about that situation. So they will keep trading until there is no demand or they're legally not allowed to, which all the measures taken thus far have not worked to constrain the Russian dark fleet, because you said Ukrainian dark fleet.
The Russian dark fleet, so yes.
The Russian dark fleet. The other weird thing is that the Ukrainians, which is also very weird, have been attacking with mines and sea drones the Greek ships, which is also very weird as Greece is their ally. And Greece has been giving them ammunition for their weapons. And they've been blowing up Greek ships in the Black Sea and in the Baltic. So I don't know what the plan is there, because instead of blowing up those falsely registered dark vessels, they're attacking the Greek ships.
Are these Greek ships that are involved in moving, obviously, Russian oil or...
Yes, they're involved under the CAP system, which is legally approved by the EU and the US. So why are they attacking? They don't attack the dark fleet, which is moving the really prohibited stuff. This is what I don't understand. And it's not one ship. I think it's more than 10 or 15 ships. Right. If you remember last year, one of our new building gas carriers worth $80 million, bombed by two limpet mines, carrying ammonia for fertilizer business from Russia to Europe. And the ship is probably going to be a CTL, so the ship is probably gone. So yeah, that's also a big question.
You very kindly gave us a contribution to our article on 20 years of SMI in the latest issue, where you talked about the biggest change that you've seen is a lack of common decisions and laws about shipping, and about the IMO. In the past, the IMO made the rules and everybody played by the same rules. Nowadays, the IMO says one thing and then individual companies come up with their own rules and regulations, making the business impossible to run. Can you expand a little bit on that, Harry? Because, when it comes down to things like net zero, we've seen it, the action of the US there in pushing that into the long grass and what have you. Is the IMO not an effective body now anymore then?
From what it seems, no. As the IMO was supposedly the governing body and the lawmaker for shipping, and it has lost. It's not the governing body anymore, as different states and different groups of states are doing their own shipping legislation. And what's the point of making laws that half the globe doesn't accept them? And also don't have any real logic behind them. You cannot have a net zero law when you don't have alternative fuels. You are penalizing the current fuels, and you make owners pay for using fuels that are supposedly polluting, when there is nothing to replace them with. If you go to the aviation industry or the automobile industry and tell them this, they'll be laughing. It's because you don't penalize a taxi driver because his car is polluting if the car maker cannot make a cleaner car, right? We as owners go to the shipyards and buy the latest ship with the latest engine available. If the ship is polluting, then okay, penalize the yards and penalize the engine makers. You don't penalize the buyer who just bought a ship, right? We don't control the technology ourselves. In the car making industry, you penalize the car makers. You don't penalize somebody because he bought the latest BMW and that BMW is polluting. So I think that's a joke. Push the engine makers to indeed make ammonia burning engines, and the bunker traders trade ammonia worldwide for the ships, and then say, okay, guys, now there is ammonia which is green. Ammonia is available in every major port, so switch to ammonia. That has some sense. But when there is nothing to replace the oil with, why are we being penalized, and why do we have to pay penalties to the IMO? And what will IMO do with the billions of dollars that they will raise if they start implementing net zero? What will the IMO do with all this money?
Harry, that makes inordinate sense to me.
Up to last year, probably it did not make sense because they were ready to vote it in.
But with the situation now, and the need for oil, we need gas and we need oil, and this, the world is running out. Is that whole debate moving back to hydrocarbons, transitional fuels, is being put a little bit on the back burner now, do you think?
They realize that you cannot do it without the hydrocarbons. They realize that, for example, LNG and LPG are cleaner than oil, but not 100% green. And they realize that if they want 100% green, like ammonia or methanol or nuclear, we need another 20 years, not another 3 or 5 years that they were originally aiming for.
Harry, I want to come on just a couple of things really now, just to talk. You've been very, very astute and very good in your S&P and your fleet development strategy than the companies you work. And certainly you've had forays back into the VLCC sector. Can you give us a little insight into what your new building and your fleet development strategy is moving forward? And what's the sort of line of thinking that goes through your mind when you're starting to plan?
Look, as you know, we are probably the only group in Greece with such a big fleet that has no Chinese-built vessels. A lot of big groups that were traditionally building in Japan or Korea have the last few years switched to China because the prices are better and the deliveries are prompter. We are the last big group that are still resisting to switch to China, so all our new buildings and our recent order book, comprising of 15 vessels, are all in Japan and Korea. It's a very expensive exercise, but we still believe on the difference of quality. And we still believe that when you try to sell a second-hand ship, Korean or Japanese ship has a significant premium over the equivalent Chinese ship. So for as long as we can, we will continue on that same basis until, of course, there's no choice anymore and we'll have to switch. And that time is actually coming. As you know, we have a group of 5 companies. 3 are listed and 2 are private companies. The total fleet, including new buildings, is 105 ships, somewhat evenly spread by 3 gas carriers, tankers, both crude and product, and bulk carriers of all sizes. And in the tanker segment, we had exited the VLCC segment in 2008, approximately. So nearly 18 years later, we're coming back with an entry back into the VLCC space, in order to be able to give our customers the full range of services from a product tanker up to a VLCC. Again, we chose a Korean yard for that order, probably the best yard for VLCC building. The deliveries are quite forward for all our ships, except the gas carriers we have in Japan, which are delivering this year. Everything else is for 27, 28, 29. We have also bet big time in the tanker market, despite the fact it's, let's say, falsely inflated by the current geopolitical events. But we hope to be able to not lose a lot of money if indeed the market deteriorates when and if the wars finish.
What will be the element within the market that is positive for you moving forward that's going to start to prop up, do you think, once all the geopolitics have finished and all the wars and what have you? Why do you think that the VLCC sector is going to, a good market to invest in? What's behind the thinking there?
We are not worried about the demand. We're worried about the supply. So, that's the problem. Demand, as you know, lately, most of the countries are starved for energy, especially with the Hormuz closure. They're begging for energy, so we are not worried on the demand side. We're worried on the supply of ship side. So from 27 onwards, the pressure will start on the fleet. If there are scrappings, that will be positive. If the dark fleet evaporates, that will be good. I doubt it, but that will be good. So we have to also be prepared for a downturn.
Just want to talk a little bit on Athens and the Greek cluster, ship owning cluster. Shipping, we've talked about this in the past, Harry. Shipping is driven by clusters. You've got, Hong Kong, Singapore, London, all the rest of it doing their own things, and everybody talks to each other. How strong is the Greek cluster? I mean, you've got the owners. Everybody's coming to Posidonia because of the attraction of the ship owners and the lure there. Is the cluster growing? Is it attracting in other industries? Are you seeing other businesses coming in and investing? Because there are a lot of owners that moved out to Cyprus, for instance, who are now starting to come back to Athens, aren't there?
That's correct. Imagine we are a country of 10 million people and we have 6,000 ships. We think about it, it's unbelievable. Look at the older maritime giants. Now they have very few ships. And we are fighting head-to-head with China, which is a country with 1.5 billion population, and they have all the state behind them. They have yards, they have crew, they have cargoes, they have everything. And Greece, which we have nothing, we are still able to compete head with these giants. So for me, this is an incredible story, and we hope that going forward, we will be able to maintain our leading role in Europe and being second or third largest ship owning nation worldwide.
Certainly when you and I first met 20 years ago, 18, 19 years ago. I mean, I had dark hair then and all the rest of it, and probably a little bit more hair. But you were that new young ship owner coming in, floating on the NAS, really opening up shipping to the market. It always had a very secretive sort of history. Ship owners just got on and did their job and did it very, very well. The young ship owners like yourself coming through, going onto the public markets and what have you. How do you see the younger ship owners now coming through and that sort of succession coming through? Is there that attraction and that appetite still?
Not many are, let's say, open and transparent like myself. The majority are following their father's footstep and trying to stay more secretive, let's say. There's no right or wrong.
Finally, Harry, the Greek version of the Dragon's Den. I mean, you certainly, it's a show that's taken all of Europe by storm and certainly the UK as well. How have you enjoyed it? I mean, what's it been like?
Because it's my psychotherapy and go there and forget everything else. And it's a bit of a charity here because here we don't make any money. So we give money to young people to set up their first business and we rarely make any return. So it's more of a charity than actual business, a business and a profit like it does happen in the UK. A lot and we're heading for season 4.
Wow. And it's made you famous. I mean, now people will be stopping you in the street, presumably.
Yeah, something like that.
How do you deal with that side of it? Because
I have no problem. You know my style. I'm very open and very cool, and I have no problem whatsoever.
Harry, I just want to say thank you very much indeed for your time today. And I look forward to seeing you in Posidonia in a couple of weeks' time. I think I'll come in on the week on Saturday, but it's going to be good fun.
Thank you very soon.
And thank you for your support as well.